Welcome to the Especially for Athletes podcast, where we explore essential principles that empower athletes to learn life's most valuable lessons through sports.
Well, Dustin, today we're going to talk about an important subject. I think it's important. We often focus on athletes competing without contempt and acting appropriately as they compete. But there's this other element, and that's fans and student sections in particular. And so we both know sports are emotional. You know, they can be highly charged. It brings out passion, intensity, and energy. And that's why student sections are so powerful. They change the atmosphere of a game. They give their team an edge. There's a reason why it's always easier to win at home than it is away. But sometimes fans cross the line. We saw that recently. You probably saw this, Dustin. Arizona basketball fans chanting derogatory insults at their BYU players. F the Mormons. For whatever reason, that's an acceptable, common thing that's yelled at BYU teams. It made national news. Of course, the University of Arizona and their student section leaders apologized, saying this isn't who they are. It's usually not a whole team or school or organization. It's usually a few knuckleheads. But that kind of thing happens everywhere. And you're probably familiar with this story, Dustin. It happened the other side of the coin. BYU fans haven't always been on the right side of this subject that we're talking about. Elder Jeffrey Holland, a leader of the church, told a story one time of a young returned missionary had served for the church that sponsors Brigham Young University. He started out his playing time with BYU. He wasn't getting much playing time there. He decided to transfer to a new school. His coaches and his teammates supported him in that. He went on to that new opportunity. But when he came back to play against BYU, what happened to him was shocking. And here's what Jeffrey Holland said regarding that. The vitriolic abuse that poured out of the stands on this young man's head that night, a Latter-day Saint, a returned missionary, a newlywed, someone who gave charitable service to youth in his community and waited excitedly for a new baby coming to him and his wife, what was said and done and showered upon him that night by BYU fans and on his wife and their families should not have been experienced by any human being anywhere, anytime. Then after the game, the young man's new coach, a legendary figure in college basketball, looked at him and said something heartbreaking. What's going on here? You're the hometown boy who is made good. These are your people. These are your friends. How did this happen? How did a crowd of good people, a crowd that was mostly members of the same faith as this young man, turn so ugly so quickly? The next day, when people defended their behavior, one fan said, listen, we're talking about basketball here, not Sunday school. If you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. We pay good money to see these games. We can act the way we want. We can check our religion at the door. Jeffrey Holland responded to this by saying, we check our religion at the door? You never check your religion at the door. Not ever. So there's a little background, Dustin. I just didn't want it to seem like it was in defense of BYU. This is a problem everywhere. It creeps down into the high school ranks. It's parents at little 7-year-old peewee soccer games. And I'm just wondering your thoughts as we address this topic of how fans behave. What is it that makes us feel good about taking all the standards we have for behavior other places and checking at the door, yelling things at people that we would never go up to them and say to their face in a grocery store, or even if it was a one-on-one interaction after a game, would never do it. But when we're up in the stands with 20,000 people around us or the other parents, what is it that makes someone feel comfortable to just be so far less than their normal standard of behavior?
I don't know. I think that question's been asked a lot over the years, and no one knows why. It's probably just because it's accepted. It's not policed, right? You're not going to get in trouble for saying you suck to a referee, but you would get in trouble and people would look at you and be disgusted if you said that to, the person bagging your groceries at the grocery store because they weren't doing it right. Right. But for whatever reason, when you're in a crowd cheering, even if you haven't paid for the tickets, if it's at a free, 14-year-old basketball game, for some reason, it's okay to say it to the refs to a point, and that point varies depending on the referee, and that's where you run into all sorts of problems. Is because nobody knows what they can and can't get away with, but they want to get away with as much as they can. You want to be able to say and scream as much as you can. I think I don't know. I think some fans get some sort of sense of, I don't know, I guess power, or maybe it's I know more than you do, and I'm going to make sure that everybody knows I do. So I'm going to scream and yell this. And it's almost this like, wow, he's really competitive. He must really care. And you're showing your passion and love for your team if you're screaming and yelling. If you're not, it must be that you don't care if you win or lose the game or not. You're apathetic to the result. And that's not always the case. But, this person who said we check our religion at the door, I remember hearing that, and obviously everybody that's religious thought, how dare him say that? But everybody does. I mean, he was right in what he said. To some point, Shad, everybody checks something at the door when they come in to a game, even if they're not screaming humiliating insults. If they're booing, you don't boo people outside of a facility.
Do you imagine?
Yeah. Yeah. You imagine, like I said, the cash register, ooh, it would be funny, but it'd be, you boo your waiter, boo your waitress, but we all do. And argue with refs and complain and just, there's just this freedom because there's passion. Everybody's given a little bit longer leash, I guess, to react and act. And so is it right? No. Although, I would say that I don't know that we'll ever do a podcast that will fall on probably deafer ears than this one. I mean, right? Yeah. The people listening to our podcast probably, I hope, aren't the ones that are out there doing it. But if they are, I highly doubt that what we say is going to change them. Now, if you are that person that's yelling, you suck at a ref or you suck at a coach, okay, then my comment to you, you ready? This is very blunt, might lose our follower. The person saying that, you suck. Like, you suck if you're doing that. If you're yelling that at referees, and if you're yelling that at coaches, you're a joke. Like,
or players.
Suck. Yeah, or players. You're an idiot. I'm sorry, but you are. If that's you listening to this, you're a moron. Right? Like, you embarrass your family, you embarrass your community. The people who hear you think that that's how the people in your community are and the people at your school are. So your representation of your community is now polluted because you're an idiot who can't keep his mouth shut. I get it. We get frustrated and we're going to say, oh, that's a bad call. And we're going to complain and be frustrated by it. But the insults, saying anything, you suck, worse words get said. Making comments about a person's religion or calling a coach or a ref an idiot or something like that, or a player, finding stuff online that you can say about a player's family when they're close to you, right? I know people that will find sensitive things, like really mean things that they'll find out about somebody online. They'll do research, and then and there's jabbing and joking and some trash talk, but I think everybody knows when the line's being crossed. Maybe not. I guess obviously not, because saying F the Mormons, nobody that was saying that thought that there might be people, including people on their team at Arizona, and people in the community and at the school that are members of that faith and other faiths who say similar things. It's ridiculous. It's cowardly. I think it's what small people do to want to sound like they know a lot or care a lot or are passionate about something. And they embarrass themselves and their family and their community when they do it.
Yeah. And particularly, I wanted to talk for a minute to the student sections. Many of the young people that we meet with, they're part of the student section as well. You know, they play football in the fall and then they go cheer on the basketball team in the winter, right? Yeah. And sometimes I see where things cross the line. For example, we had Zach Erickson on our podcast, the head football coach for Snow College, and he talked about a time, he's half white, half black, and he talked about a time when every time he'd go to the free throw line as a high school basketball player, the fans would start chanting Oreo, you know, something so inappropriate. And so I just wanted to take a minute, give some suggestions. I love the passion and energy of high school sports, college sports, NBA sports. Like, as a matter of fact, growing up playing high school basketball, there was one school that I hated to go play at. It was Little Rock. And it was not because they had passionate, rabid fans. It's because they had no fans. Like, it was the most boring place to play. You would go, and when you could hear a mom saying, "It's okay, Jimmy," you know what I mean? Like, you just, the adrenaline, it had a harder time getting the adrenaline and everything else. I loved going to Highland, our rival. It was always packed and it was fun. Like, it makes it so fun to have a packed, energized arena, whether it's your own or those that you're playing. And so we definitely aren't discouraging that, but I was just wondering if we could take a minute. I thought through maybe a few tips, Dustin. I would just love a few sentences from you on each of these tips to fan bases, you know, because athletes should be leading out and helping their fan bases be appropriate. And half the time you're on the field one season, as we've said, and then you're off the field in the stands the next. And so here's just a few things that I think would be helpful to make sure that you're not that kind, that the person that you're saying, you're an idiot, you know, like, if you do these things. The first is, let all of your energy go toward your own team, or the majority of it. Be loud, be positive, encourage your players, cheer for great plays, like, get loud, get crazy when your team does something good. It's better to cheer for your team than against the other team. Right. And I would just love your thoughts just on that tip to student sections, to create traditions and things like that are more directed toward your team than the other team. There's some safety there. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think you have just as much production from your team, more probably, if your focus is on them. There's going to be bad calls made and people are going to boo. That's never going to change, and it's going to happen. And I even think referees are used to it, and that's probably fine. Boo, whatever, move on. But cheering for your own team when they do well, having chants, having fun things that you do that are positive. But anything directed at the other team isn't necessary. It's just not. And there are certain things that get said that maybe people would say is okay, if, you know, an airball chant or something. I personally don't like it when I hear it. I just think I don't think anybody, if that was your son or if that was you, would want thousands of people cheering that. But that's, again, that's not going to change. But focus on your team and have fun chants you do. And you can see college arenas now that, we're having all these college March Madness games and everything. You'll see fan bases that do all sorts of things when the other team's shooting a free throw, with how they wave their hands or when they clap, or that stuff's all great. You know, a team gets a first down and everybody does something, and that creates energy and excitement for the players. And that's what you want. You want them to play well. The truth is, when you're really ultra negative, I can tell you this from a player, but also as a coach. If you have a fan base that is ultra negative, it rubs off on the players a little bit, especially if it's coming from their parents. When you look up and you see your parents or people close to you that are really upset and mad and disappointed, and they're yelling and screaming at something, you can't help but then feel like, oh yeah, we're getting gypped. We're getting robbed. They're right. See, everybody agrees that this referee is wrong. Everybody thinks that this referee is losing this for us. And the focus becomes more on what you can't control, and that's the calls of the referee, and less on, okay, we got to play through this and figure out how to still score regardless of whether or not the ref's making a call or not. And I can tell you from being a coach, the majority of the time, Shad, it works out fairly evenly. We just don't see when it's called incorrectly on the other team. We only see when it's called incorrectly on us. But I've coached a lot of football games where I've seen calls against my team and thought he absolutely missed that call. But I check myself every time because I know, and I've also seen where we have absolutely had a holding penalty or done something on our end and it's been missed. And so it usually works itself out. So just cheer for your own team, be excited, and understand that in the case of refs, they're going to make mistakes. In the case of other team, it's probably just the golden rule, right? Just treat them like you'd want to be treated, and don't check those kind of standards, your character at the door when you walk into a game.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things you said there, I think if fan bases concentrate when it's directed at your team, like all those chants and traditions, like the Cameron Crazies, you see they have all the things they do. They like put out their fingers, and just like it is so fun. It's not personal. It's, really cool. It's just awesome. I would love to play in an environment like that against them, right? But one thing that it seems that great fan bases do is they concentrate more on noise than on substance. And someone's at the free throw line, like you said, behind the basket. I mean, I saw one of my favorite ones where a student section behind the free throw, there's a sheet over a guy and they're pretending like the guy's dressed up in a doctor's outfit. And then another guy comes out under the sheet like the one guy was giving birth to a guy. The guy's sitting there shooting a free throw. I mean, that stuff's just funny, it's awesome. The signs they hold up and the funny things they hold up, all that stuff is the fun of the game. The noise, I love when I'm in environments and all of a sudden it's like a key possession or whatever it is, and you can just feel the energy and they're trying to distract, make it hard for a play call to come in to a football team, or someone's at the free throw line, or you're playing defense and it's just like, and like that stuff is fun. It contributes to the environment. But when someone's at the free throw line and you're not using noise to support or to distract, and those fun things that could be done, you're doing things like chanting Oreo or F the Mormons or whatever it is. Like that stuff, you have to check so many standards at the door to go after someone's religion or race or appearance. I've seen that happen where they start going after something that a kid's probably insecure about. And so I love that. And I love what you said about referees. Even in that Arizona game that led to the blank the Mormons chant, people kind of compiled. There was the last play. It was kind of controversial, led to 2 free throws that won the game for BYU. But then, you could go back and just in the 2 minutes at the end of the game and see 4 or 5 calls that went Arizona's way that could have gone BYU's way. And so that happens, and give some grace to the referees. And I think that those are important things. Don't get personal. Use noise, not insults. But there's one other thing, Dustin, that I think we need to address, not just on this podcast, but as a society. There's a lot of schools that have these barstool accounts, these anonymous accounts, and they use them to go after opposing teams or their coaches or their players, where they'll take pictures or find pictures or even create AI generated pictures, and they'll make fun of kids. Like they'll mock kids, and sometimes it's good, wholesome fun, but other times it really crosses lines. And there has been some situations that I'm aware of where kids are deeply hurt. We had a situation on one of these accounts where threats were made to a coach's daughter on these accounts. I'm sure you've seen that barstool culture that exists. To the kids that we present our message to, the Compete Without Contempt message in particular, but also that seek to bless not to impress. Well, you could say seek to bless, not to destroy, right? Do you have a message for those schools that are E4A schools about these barstool accounts and just thoughts on some of the things that happen on those?
I know that schools, most schools, I should say I know that all schools, I know that many schools are aware of those. The difficulty is finding out who runs them, who's behind it. And then nobody likes it, at least at the administrator. I've seen, like you said, some really bad things. I was told there was something said about me or my family on one. I just said, I don't want to know. Don't tell me. It wouldn't bother me too much, but I didn't want it to, if it was about a family member, I wouldn't want them to know. And so, but yeah, man, it's the same thing. It's just, again, I don't know that, unfortunately, Shad, I sound pessimistic here. I don't think that, I hope I'm wrong, but I think it's going to get worse. I think AI, these apps, these different, just society in general, whatever people can do to get a like or get a retweet or feel like they're famous for a minute, even if they're just famous behind an anonymous account, but they see that something they did is getting traction. There's this feeling of I've made it. People like me because they're retweeting or resharing or liking or something my post, and they'll go to whatever lengths necessary to feel that feeling of being recognized or being good at something, and even though it's evil. But so yeah, I don't think it's going to stop. But if people that listen to this know of people doing that, I'd ask you to. Again, I say this to kids all the time when I've been speaking the last several months. Be the person that your grandma thinks you are at school. And grandma, if she knew you were doing that, would probably be absolutely humiliated, right? So it goes back to parenting, right? It's not, this isn't the coaches and this isn't the teacher's job to teach kids this. It's mom and dad's job. And unfortunately, we have parents who do nothing, could care less about what's going on, and they don't have these kind of conversations with their kids. And until that happens, I think we're just going to we'll keep talking about it, but we're going to, like we've done in many subjects, talk till we're blue in the face about it and see very little change. But little change is better than no change. So if this helps somebody listening say, yeah, I'm going to talk to my kid about this, or I'm going to try to find out who's behind these accounts and ask them to stop, or ask people I know that know who these accounts are not to follow them or not to share what they say. Those are the things we can do. The people who want to be evil will always be evil. And that's not going to go away, but maybe we can limit the amount of people that pay attention to them by asking our people to shun that stuff, stay away from it, and try to make the game a little cleaner and a little bit more respectful for everybody, so everybody can enjoy it. Because this stuff you're talking about, and parents, if you don't know, I hope you never find out, but there's some incredibly evil, unbelievably creative in that some people think are funny, but they're at the expense, the real deep, difficult, painful expense of other people.
Yeah.
In an effort to get laughs, and wrapped around, we're just playing, it's just sports. Again, to your earlier point about it's just a game. Well, it's not when you're saying that stuff. That's gone beyond the game. It's not just a game when you let it get to that point. And so, yeah, we have to keep talking to our leaders about it. These athlete leaders, they're the ones that are going to stop it. It won't be admin and adults. It'll be kids saying enough. Finding out who's behind these things, not sharing it, not giving it attention is how that stuff will die out. And the only way it's going to is if people like us continue to ask kids and talk to kids about it and try to get them to feel, not just know that it's wrong, but feel that it's wrong. They know that it's wrong. They just don't feel the pain that the other person's feeling. They don't feel empathy or remorse. And so they know what it's, but they can wrap that around the excuse of, I'm just joking. It's just a joke. It's just a basketball game, because they don't feel it yet. And so that's what we're trying to do. But yeah, parents, if you're, please talk to your kids and coaches and admin. encourage your teams to, if they know this stuff, to not give it attention.
Awesome, Dustin. In fact, I have there's some dreams and hopes that I would have in regard to addressing this subject, because we teach athletes every single day that they have the spotlight, that they have the influence. I imagine at the beginning of a school year, influential football player or girls soccer player or whatever it might be, you're handed the mic every now and then at a homecoming assembly or at the first game of the year type of a thing. And to have a leader say, hey, just FYI, please be loud, be proud. Thank you for all these traditions. Thank you for all the support. Can we ask a favor of you as a team? One of our goals is to compete without hatred, compete without contempt, to destroy the other team, but to do it the right way. Can you follow our lead? Will you keep your chants and everything positive and toward our team? I think an athlete getting on a Barstool account and saying, like, let's say, someone from their school had posted something about the other school, to get on that account with your name attached and to be, hey, this is not who we are. Please don't post this stuff about the other school. If athletes would use their position to address these things as well, I do think they can make a difference. And if nothing else, imagine that kid that's maybe being mocked online, seeing someone that they admire on the other team getting on and saying, hey, man, this isn't cool. This guy's cool. Like, please don't do this. You're not representing our school well right now. Please take down this account or make it positive. I think our athletes can do that stuff. And I just think that there's this general thing for anyone listening to this, that I don't think it's ever right, whatever our standards are, to check them at the door when we come to sports. And I think a fun social media account would be to carry around a bunch of $100 bills in your pocket so you can make it up to people, but then go act in public the way that people act at sporting events, and then just give people like, I was just making a video. Here's $100, like we're talking about at a grocery store, or someone changing your oil, just treating them the way we treat fans and players sometimes. We'd feel pretty ridiculous if we brought it outside of sports. So I think we could be plenty loud, crazy, have fun, bring that energy. That's what makes sports so fun. We just don't have to make it negative. We don't have to add the contempt. We can compete and cheer and do all those things without hatred behind it. That's when it crosses the line. So any final thoughts, Dustin?
Nope, I agree, 100%. Eyes up, do the work.
Thank you for joining the Especially for Athletes podcast. To learn more about Especially for Athletes organization, get a copy of our book, The Sportlight, or to bring our program to your team, school, business, or organization, visit us at especiallyforathletes.org.